Fine. With that, he felt the pain in his body recede like the tide, but this was only because Ruexian had suppressed all of the disease. It had penetrated deep into his organs, brain, and bones. Once it erupted, it would completely crush Zhu Lai. What do you want me to do? Zhu Lai originally thought Ruexian wanted him to collect medals for her, but he never expected Ruexian to say, I want to hear about the local customs and practices of the Mist Province. I heard that the main base of the Fire Devourers in the Mist Province is Fire Melt Mountain. Do you come from there? When Ruexian asked this question, her expression became stranger and stranger. She licked her lips subconsciously. An irrepressible desire burned and spread through her chest like an evil fire. Fire Melt Mountain is the holy land of my race. It's not a place that just anyone can live in. Normally, we only gather there during the Sacred War. All Zhu Lai could do was answer honestly. The Sacred War. A gleam of light flashed through Ruexian's eyes. Fire Devourers were violent in nature. They often clashed with other races, but only the war against the merfolk of the South Sea was known as the Sacred War. Every single Sacred War would gather the strength of the entire race, and they would battle until the world darkened, where the sun and moon dimmed. When was the last Sacred War? The two of them conversed back and forth. In the eyes of others, they had turned enemies into friends, but Ruexian maintained a certain distance from Zhu Lai the entire time, asking about the Mist Province with great patience. When the last bolt of lightning vanished, she opened her eyes and unleashed her soul sense. She could sense that the entire world had become different. Something else had appeared in her eyes. This was both the comprehension from breaking through to a major realm of cultivation, as well as the effects of the wisdom imbuement, and the effects of the latter were probably much deeper than the former. Congratulations, Chenglu. Li Qingshan went up to receive her, with a smile. He felt rather strange inside. In his eyes, Hua Chenglu had also changed drastically. Her appearance and figure were already close to perfection, but her bearing paled in comparison. Let alone Gu Yenying, she probably could not even match up to the vicious Qian Rongji. Whether it was love or loathing, it was a clear symbol that had been honed. But right now, Hua Chenglu radiated with a peaceful and lively aura, like morning dew had condensed on her petals. Under the illumination of the sun, she shone with rainbow light. She had already begun to show her unparalleled beauty. Of course, this was only his first impression. If there were any more specific changes, even Li Qingshan was unable to describe them. He thought, let's hope it's not a bad thing. Hua Chenglu called out, Big Brother Li, with a smile before meditating and recovering her spiritual qi very soon. Then she asked, How long has it been already? Li Qingshan said, 2.5 days. Then let's hurry up and begin. Hua Chenglu entered the cavern and left the heart of the tree as she said that. Li Qingshan could not take advantage of her. He rubbed his nose and said to the Banyan Tree King, The girl was originally a little interested in me, but after what you've done, she's lost interest. How are you going to make it up to me? He had not been idling around in the past 2 days either. He constantly asked the Banyan Tree King for guidance on cultivation, so they became much more familiar with each other. Most of the time, they joked around. As for whether Hua Chenglu was interested in him or not, he actually did not care too much. The human heart is unpredictable. How can you be certain with a single glance? Then thank you for your guidance over the past few days, fellow. Li Qingshan smiled. The Banyan Tree King's understanding of the arts of the boundless ocean had benefited him tremendously. He gained some confidence in condensing an ocean pearl and breaking through to golden core. Of course, he did not forget to ask about how to merge water and fire. The Banyan Tree King had mentioned a few methods, but these methods could clearly only balance regular water and fire. They could not balance the spirit turtle and the phoenix. Li Qingshan dared not say too much either, but a legend that the Banyan Tree King mentioned piqued Li Qingshan's interest. Chapter 657. Wisps of clouds appeared out of nowhere in the azure sky, rapidly growing and merging together. They barely managed to envelop the cloud-like canopy of the great banyan tree. They were different from regular clouds, seeming rather unnatural. Li Qingshan sat cross-legged in a tree hole near the crown of the tree. He was chanting something, wholeheartedly casting the spell. Even with his ability to control water, casting a heavenly rain of such a large area was not an easy task. He needed to coordinate it with the incantation. The spiritual qi in his dantian receded like the tide, and the clouds rapidly thickened. Sunlight was unable to penetrate them, so they naturally turned from white to black. The rainwater filled with spiritual qi constantly accumulated, like a sponge that had absorbed enough water, only waiting for a carefree storm. Hua Chenglu arrived at the very bottom of the great banyan tree. The roots of the great banyan tree and the sun vines intertwined in the soil, entangling with one another. Very soon, she found a suitable spot and pressed her hands against the roots of the sun vines. She used the method of springtime bloom, and her hands shone with rainbow-like light. The sun vines that were as huge as dragons trembled from this tiny force. They absorbed all of the force with their instinctive ability to absorb spiritual qi, and the trembling rapidly intensified. Mature sun vines could basically ignore any technique, but the purpose of this force was not to attack, but to stimulate. Just like how people who were immune to poison could not resist aphrodisiacs, the flowering and fruiting of plants was deeply ingrained in their instincts. Very soon, all the spiritual qi in Hua Qinglu's body was drained dry. Immediately, an aerial root wrapped around her, channeling pure, with spiritual qi into her body. Flower buds appeared on the sun vines first. A while later, golden sunflowers bloomed resplendently, shining with light as resplendent as the sun. The Banyan Tree King said, "All right, I feel much more relaxed now. Thank you. The nectar of the sunflowers is very valuable to you. Go collect some." Hua Qinglu let out a sigh of relief and smiled as well. She had arrived at the Banyan Tree King, and she finally saw light again. It had only been a few days, but she felt like she had been reincarnated. Li Qingshan also received the Banyan Tree King's message. His chanting stopped, and with a wah sound, the sponge in the sky seemed to have been forcefully twisted. The heavy rain poured down, landing on every leaf and flowing down the tree trunk. The sunflowers bloomed even more brilliantly in the dark rain. Li Qingshan arrived outside the tree hole as well. He watched as Hua Chenglu fluttered about between each flower like a butterfly. The banyan tree king's voice rang out by his ear again. "Come, take your present." Li Qingshan followed the guidance of the banyan tree king and arrived at the crown of the tree. The branches and leaves crisscrossed, and one could not see more than 10 feet ahead. The branches swayed slightly. The leaves parted to make a path for him. Li Qingshan arrived at the end of the path and saw a small, pitiful flower blooming on a thick branch. It seemed like several hundred strands of fine hair had gathered together. Its color ranged from white to red, making it very inconspicuous. It was completely out of proportion to the banyan tree king's colossal body. It could not compare to the huge, resplendent sunflower either. "Is this the present?" "Don't hurry, don't hurry." Time seemed to pass quickly. The flower's color darkened before it formed a tiny fruit in the end, going from green to yellow. Of course, it was still very inconspicuous. "Hurry up and pluck it," urged the banyan tree king. His voice was slightly tired. Li Qingshan extended his hand and plucked the fruit. He fiddled around with it. "Thank you, but can this fruit be eaten?" He probed it with his soul sense, but he did not sense much spiritual chi in it. Instead, it had gathered another power. It was a powerful will that was similar to soul sense. He had no idea what it could be used for. "Li Qingshan, give me the fruit in your hand, and our grudges will be written off." Si Qing's voice suddenly rang out from the sky. It was filled with urgency. When he saw the banyan tree blossom and bear fruit, his eyes widened. The fruit of wisdom. He had once humbly begged the banyan tree king for this fruit of wisdom. The banyan tree king had been known for its wisdom since ancient times. The fruits it bore could not allow one's cultivation to advance to the heavens, but they contained the crystallization of the banyan tree king's wisdom, which could enlighten one's wisdom and comprehension. This was different from the brainwashing of wisdom imbuement. Instead, it was enlightenment and development, like the Buddhist severe warning. The effects of this blow were not the same. Ordinary people would at most become a little more clear-headed after eating it, and it might not even have much effect. However, it had a miraculous effect on those cultivators who had reached a bottleneck and their cultivation stagnated. In order to break through the third heavenly tribulation and reach the king's realm, Si Qing naturally needed a fruit of wisdom. However, he was rejected by the banyan tree king. The spiritual power required to bear a fruit of wisdom was much greater than 10 rounds of wisdom imbuement. Li Qingshan had only killed some burrowing mites and cast a spell, yet he had received such a generous reward. This made Si Qing even more jealous. Hearing Si Qing's words, Li Qingshan naturally knew that it was something good. He immediately stuffed it into his mouth and chewed vigorously. The taste was much more sour than he had imagined, but when he thought of Si Qing's ugly expression, his mood immediately improved. He lay down on the tree branch and ate happily. Si Qing's expression was as ugly as he had imagined. He could no longer tolerate Li Qingshan's repeated provocations. A mere foundation establishment cultivator actually dared to be so arrogant just because he had Gu Yenying as his backing. "Li Qingshan, you must die." "Ha! Just because of that bunch of trash under you." Li Qingshan smiled as he spat out the core of the fruit. He was slightly stunned, as if a spiritual light had passed through his mind. That spiritual light was like an invisible thread, connecting all the messy and disorderly information in his mind together. However, he really couldn't say what effect it had. His cultivation had not increased in the slightest, and his divine sense had not become stronger either. However, the questions regarding the arts of the boundless ocean that he had been asking the Banyan Tree King for guidance these days had suddenly become clear. Originally, he had only listened to them and remembered them in his heart, waiting to slowly digest them in the future. Now, however, he had gained some more comprehension. Apart from the arts of the boundless ocean, the other various cultivation techniques, even the usage of moves in battle and the minor details of his daily life, had all undergone an indescribable change. No matter what he thought of, he felt that it was different from before. It was as if he was looking at these problems from a different perspective and perspective. It was a very special and fresh feeling. The Banyan Tree King said, "Other people can teach you knowledge, but they can't teach you wisdom. Although this fruit is known as the fruit of wisdom, true wisdom still has to be found by you yourself. I believe that one day, when you stand before me again, you will become even more intelligent and powerful. Of course, you are a good person. No, you are a good tree. I thank you for your help, but there will be a day in the future when you will also need my help." Li Qingshan said seriously. He had gained a lot from this trip, and based on Si Qing's performance alone, he could see the value of this banyan fruit. It had probably far exceeded the reward he deserved. As the saying went, "A favor of a meal must be repaid, and a grievance must be avenged." For a mere foundation establishment cultivator to say, "You will also need my help," to a demon king that had ruled for thousands of years, it was definitely extremely arrogant in the eyes of others. They would definitely mock him. With the Banyan Tree King's status, who knows how many people are willing to work for him? What right do you have to say something like that, brat? However, the Banyan Tree King would not ignore such arrogant words. Instead, he felt that the feeling from the unseen world was growing stronger and stronger. It was just like how the golden cicada spirit king was certain that the chant of Devanaga would fall on little. And this was not divination, but just a kind of intuition of kings who had reached their realm. But when that time comes, it won't be as simple as killing insects and watering them. That's exactly what I was thinking. Perhaps there will be a chance in the future. Let's go outside the well together and take a look. This sounds like something an old friend would say. Li Qingshan's heart skipped a beat. The golden cicada spirit king and the Banyan Tree King probably knew each other. Their temperaments and natures were probably different even among demon kings. According to the book he had read, there were plenty of brutal demon kings. None of them were easy to get along with. There were probably very few that could be as peaceful as them. The great Banyan Tree King followed the way of nature, while the golden cicada spirit king practiced the Buddhist Dharma the entire time. Being able to befriend them truly was a fortunate thing. However, it was not convenient for him to ask for confirmation right now. a fragrant gust of wind assaulted him from behind. Hua Chunlu heard Si Qing's voice and hurried over. "Big Brotherly, are you all right?" Li Qingshan smiled at her before suddenly looking back. His gaze pierced through the curtain of rain and landed at the end of the rainforest. Over a dozen black specks appeared. Si Qing was already impatient to kill him, directly teleporting his lackeys over. Wasn't Li Qingshan the same? Hua Chunlu still wanted to say something. Li Qingshan leapt up and leapt over the curtain of rain. The spiritual rain that was still falling was pulled and guided, gathering towards him and following him. It was like he had unfurled a pair of huge wings of water as he took off into the sky. The scarred man and the others all revealed vicious light in their eyes. They unleashed various techniques and clashed against one another. The distance of less than 10 kilometers was basically reduced to nothing in the blink of an eye. Chapter 658. Zhu Lai's expression changed drastically. His entire body blazed with flames as he charged towards Ru Xian without any regard for the consequences. Ru Xian's smile did not change as she flew backwards. The distance between them rapidly shrank before slowly widening again. Various violent diseases erupted on Zhu Lai's body at the same time. His entire body swelled up, and his skin festered. The Ru Xian in his vision gradually blurred. His eyes became clouded over, almost blinding him. "You bastard! Let's die together!" Zhu Lai let out the howl of a wild beast on the brink of death. His chest shone brightly and throbbed violently. His heart was about to explode. The heart of a fire devourer was like the demon core of a demon. It was the center where all of their strength was gathered. Once it was detonated, it could erupt with startling destructive power. At such a close distance, it would be difficult for Ru Xian to escape death. The struggle of a trapped beast. Cardiac arrest. Ru Xian spread her fingers with a smile and closed them gently. In that moment, Zhu Lai seemed to have lost all of his strength. For the first time in his life, his heart calmed down, no longer beating. The flames on his body were extinguished as well. His body continued to charge towards Ru Xian, doing his best to raise the trident in his hand and stab it towards her. Ru Xian turned to the side, slightly, and brushed past him. She plunged a hand that was as white as jade into his chest and dug out a bright red heart. It rapidly hardened in the wind, turning into a fiery red rock, the heart of molten fire. Zhu Lai's body was completely devoured by the disease. He died and rotted away. The plague ghost appeared from his body and returned to Ru Xian's body. Ru Xian let out an undetectable sigh and glanced at the sky. The azure blue gradually turned blood red. She could vaguely sense that she had probably been influenced by the dragon arena in some way, which was why she lost control over her killing intent. However, once the wild beast was released, how was she supposed to lock it up again? As soon as Li Qingshan left the great banyan tree, he sensed an extremely clear change. Killing intent condensed in the air, dyeing the sky blood red. The tiger demon in his sea of consciousness let out a bloodthirsty growl. If it were not for the spirit turtle suppression, probably even he would have been affected. Although the dragon arena that had almost been refined was not as good as the actual Azura field, it had already gained some of its true meaning. The cultivators of the various sects and schools slaughtered in a frenzy, no longer holding back at all. In just a few short days, several thousand cultivators had died in battle. It was like adding oil to the fire, as if the air itself was burning. The lake disappeared and turned into a wasteland. Si Qing's hunting plan was back on track. The 17 Foundation establishment cultivators rested and built up their strength. Flying swords flew out of their hands, one after another. Their spiritual light wove into a dense net, blocking all of Li Qingshan's paths of advance and retreat. Li Qingshan smiled and suddenly disappeared. Although it didn't achieve the effect of invisibility, it made all the locking on to nothing. The coordination between the arcane artifacts immediately became slightly chaotic, revealing an undetectable crack. He swung his sword conveniently, and the net shattered. Right when he was about to kill a few of them, he suddenly felt his body grow heavy, and he could not help but slow down. He knew he had fallen victim to the opponent's technique. It should be some kind of earth element technique. At the same time, at least 7 techniques landed on him. Techniques could not compare to arcane artifacts. Their range of attack was tremendous, so he could only block them forcefully. His protective artifact had been destroyed, and his demonic armor was covered in cracks. He took this opportunity to swing his sword 5 times. Kill, 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 kill. Of the 17 cultivators, only 10 were left. The 2 specks of red light in Li Qingshan's eyes swept across them. Everyone's expression changed, their hearts filled with shock. The battle went from the sky to the ground. Suddenly, a giant hand formed from sand reached out from the desert and grabbed Li Qingshan. The scarred man roared as he swung the earth-shattering hammer of all directions. Li Qingshan's demonic qi moved, scattering the giant hand. Then, he punched the earth-shattering hammer of all directions. Boom! The armor covering his arm shattered into pieces, scattering in all directions. The scarred man's eyes were wide open, his hands dripping with blood. The earth-shattering hammer of all directions flew out of his hand, spinning into the sky. Suddenly, he felt something tighten around his neck. A black ring had appeared. The reigning demon ring tightened, digging into his flesh. With a puff, a huge head was forcefully snapped off. His last words were, "So you've been hiding your strength all along." In his battle with Zhu Lai, everyone had seen him being forced into a desperate situation. He had only managed to turn defeat into victory with great difficulty. Everyone had thought that was the limit of his strength. "A bunch of weaklings dares to kill me." Li Qingshan laughed. The reigning demon ring flew back into his hand. He pointed his sword at the sky. "Thank you for your generous gift." Si Qing saw this scene. He clenched his fists tightly, his expression changing drastically. "Kill!" The remaining 10 cultivators gathered their courage and charged at Li Qingshan. However, they couldn't win even with numbers, let alone with fewer people. Li Qingshan had fought fiercely, but not only did he not feel tired, his killing intent surged. He hadn't had his fill yet. In the blink of an eye, another 3 people died. The remaining 6 were frightened out of their wits, fleeing in all directions. Li Qingshan waved his hand, and the demon suppression tower suppressed 1 person. The chains of demon suppression wrapped around another with a clatter, and the demon reigning hoop wrapped around another. He showed no mercy, swinging his sword and killing them one by one. If he waited for a day or 2, there would only be 1 battlefield left. It would be even more convenient for him to kill them. "What? You killed them all?" Wei Yongsheng was surprised. Everyone had witnessed the group's strength. It was basically overwhelming. In reality, when Li Qingshan did not rendezvous with them in the beginning, they all thought he had been killed. They had even worried for him. Hua Sengzan looked at Li Qingshan's appearance and secretly guessed, this is probably his hidden strength. Why does it seem like the legendary demonification? However, he also knew now was not the time to talk about this. "Qingshan, have you seen Qinglu?" "Don't worry. She's very well. She's already broken through to Foundation establishment now. There's something strange about this dragon arena. Is there any way to make these people calm down? As they spoke, a few other chi practitioners that were close to madness charged over recklessly, but they were all cut down by Li Qingshan in a single stroke. Although he had no idea what Si Qing was trying to do, Li Qingshan insisted on doing the opposite. You want them to kill one another, but I want them to coexist peacefully. Wah, Sungzan exclaimed, but Chenglu's only at the 8th layer. You'll understand once you see her, Wei Yangsheng said. If Junior Brother Mind Enlightenment recites the Universal Kindness Mantra, or if Junior Sister Qinshin plays the Song of Calming the Heart, it might be effective. Where are they? They've all been scattered. It's useless to keep talking. Li Qingshan sucked in a deep breath and kicked up a whirlwind before him. His chest swelled up high, and he let out an earth-shaking bellow. It was like a clap of thunder descending from the sky. The sound waves surged and echoed in the surroundings. The Foundation establishment cultivators were fine, but the Qi practitioners felt their eardrums shake viciously. Their heads ached slightly, and their minds that had been enveloped by killing intent cleared up a little. Although Li Qingshan didn't know what the Buddhist lion's roar was, he cultivated the demon suppression statuary. His voice contained the power of demon suppression, subduing the demonic nature in everyone's hearts. However, this roar alone was clearly far from enough. In the distance, the cultivators were still fighting endlessly. Li Qingshan flew up and threw out the demon-raining hoop. It turned from 1 to 10, then from 10 to 100, trapping the Qi practitioners who were fighting the fiercest. The demon suppression chain whizzed out, binding a few Foundation establishment cultivators who were in a frenzy of killing. However, he only subdued them, not killed them, and brought them up into the sky. Stop fighting. I'll kill anyone who dares to fight. God damn it, you're still fighting? Watch out. Li Qingshan naturally wouldn't prepare any hidden weapons. Thus, he pointed his finger, and the demon suppression chain suddenly flung out the Qi practitioner it had bound. Amidst screams, it struck another Qi practitioner and turned him into a pile of meat paste. For a moment, the shrill screams of humans before their deaths and the whistling sounds of hidden weapons pierced through the air, resounding through the sky. Using this method, Li Qingshan killed over a dozen people consecutively and finally stabilized the situation. Under the influence of the Dragon Arena, basically everyone's killing intent surged, but under the threat of certain death, their minds slowly cooled down. They all raised their heads and gazed at the sky. I'm Li Qingshan. Si Qing has set up a trap for us to kill one another. Don't fall for it, you bunch of idiots. Don't throw your puny lives away here for nothing. The Dragon Arena can affect people's minds. Everyone, sit down and meditate immediately and compose yourselves. I'll count down from 3. If there's anyone left standing, I'll kill them. Li Qingshan counted down from 3. How could Si Qing believe him? He sneered. Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? If you let go right now, I guarantee I'll definitely kill North Moon. Moyu said nothing more. Although Si Qing was the master of the Dragon Arena, he had also made several days of preparations. He had infiltrated the core of the Dragon Arena after so much difficulty, so how could he just let go? It was not like he was afraid of Jia Zhan, Yidan, and the others surrounding him. Once he succeeded, he would immediately unleash his innate ability. Who could stop him? With the Dragon Arena as a medium, the two powers constantly tugged at each other. Si Qing's power was brutal, but Moyu's power of death was like a parasite firmly attached to the Dragon Arena. It was difficult to determine who was stronger for a moment. Although the battles in the Dragon Arena had stopped, their killing intent and battle intent grew stronger and stronger, constantly pouring into the Dragon Arena and converting it into an azura field. Snow drifted through the air. A while later, the ground was covered in a layer of snow, covering all the blood and corpses. Several thousand cultivators sat on the snowy ground without moving at all, allowing the snowflakes to fall on them. Logically speaking, every single chi practitioner was impervious to heat and cold, but the snowflakes contained the power of ice. Some of the weaker chi practitioners could not help but shiver slightly, but their minds became calmer and calmer. As they listened to the chanting and recalled what they had gone through in the past few days, they shivered even though it was not cold. Countless cultivators had been killed. Many of them were their seniors, juniors, disciples, or even lovers. If it were not for Li Qingshan's appearance, probably most of the people here would have suffered the same fate. They felt both gratitude and admiration towards him, as well as a deep sense of fear. However, they felt deep hatred towards Si Qing, whether it be the cultivators of sex or the 100 academies. As a prince, can you not treat us as people, making us kill one another like goo insects just to satisfy your perverted interests? Their hatred burned like fire. Their killing intent that had been pacified after so much difficulty boiled up once more. From time to time, chi practitioners would leap up from the snowy ground with bloodshot eyes and swing their weapons. Only slaughter could pacify their fury. But immediately, another pitch-black chain shot out, entangling these people and pulling them into the pitch-black demon suppression tower. Everyone couldn't help but look at the tower-like figure standing in front of the demon suppression tower, their hearts trembling. Everyone had witnessed how Li Qingshan killed people. He did not hold back at all, cutting them down like he was chopping vegetables. Commander Li, my disciple will be fine, right? An old cultivator watched as his disciple entered the demon suppression tower and asked in worry. Li Qingshan said, "Don't worry, he won't die." The demon suppression tower could isolate the influence of the dragon arena in the first place, and it could suppress demonic nature as well. With the mental fortitude of these chi practitioners, they were basically suppressed immediately. With the situation under control, Li Qingshan did not want to kill recklessly either. That's good then. The cultivator stopped worrying and bowed deeply before retreating back into the group. "Qingshan, it's all thanks to you this time, or we'd all be in danger. I didn't think it would be so dangerous this time." At the end of the day, Lu Chongqing was afraid to reprimand Si Qing. The others were no different, but they struggled to hide the anger and dissatisfaction on their faces. "That bastard Si Qing wants us dead. I'll go to the final battlefield immediately and cut off the last of his claws and teeth." Li Qingshan visited 4 battlefields, but he failed to find the 3 people who had fled. Only a battlefield filled with a forest of stone remained. Because it was an innate formation, he chose to stabilize the situation first before freeing up his hands to hunt them down. Lu Chongqing sighed. "I wonder what benefits he'll get from doing this." Si Qing wants to refine the dragon arena into an Azura field. Han Tie said coldly. As a descendant of the school of the military from an aristocratic clan, he had vaguely heard that dragon arenas could be refined into Azura fields. He was not too sure about the exact method, but after what he had gone through, how could he not understand? After Han Tie explained, everyone came to a realization, and their hatred towards Si Qing deepened. Several thousand lives were the foundation of the cultivation community of the entire Rui commandery. They were actually used as sacrifices by him. Li Qingshan was even more determined to not let him succeed. It was obvious that after Si Qing refined the Azura field's strength had increased tremendously. He was the first to be dealt with. "Qingshan, are you all right after this transformation?" Wah Sungzan's voice suddenly rang in his ears. His eyes were filled with worry. Wah Sungzan knew about Li Qingshan's secret. Looking at his demonic appearance, he thought that it was a demon's trick. He was afraid that Li Qingshan would reveal the heavenly secret. Li Qingshan said, "Don't worry. This is an orthodox Buddhist cultivation technique. If Li Qingshan had said that this was a demonic art, Hua Sengzan would have believed him somewhat. But with such a dense demonic aura, how could it be related to Buddhism? He forced a smile and asked, "I don't see Qinglu anywhere. Has she fallen into the formation too? What am I supposed to do then?" "Aren't I here?" Li Qingshan pointed into the distance with a smile. A figure flew over from the horizon, flickering with golden light. As it turned out, it was a beautiful woman. Her bearing was extraordinary, which immediately attracted everyone's attention. "Big Brother Li?" Hua Chenglu arrived before Li Qingshan and raised her head in surprise. She had never seen Li Qingshan like this before. After Li Qingshan had left, she had finished gathering the sun nectar. The nectar was extremely valuable to her as she practiced the method of springtime bloom. So she was covered in golden pollen too. Chenglu. However, Hua Chenglu's surprise was nowhere near as great as Hua Sengzan or the people who knew her. When she entered the dragon arena, she was clearly just a qi practitioner. She was still nowhere close to the 10th layer. So how did she become a foundation establishment cultivator in the blink of an eye? And looking at her aura, she was already close to breaking through to mid-foundation establishment. Chapter 662. Before Li Qingshan, the 3 foundation establishment cultivators were basically unable to fight back at all. Li Qingshan ended their lives in a single stroke. Even foundation establishment cultivators were like that. So the qi practitioners were obviously even worse off. They wandered around the maze before returning to Li Qingshan in the end. In the end, the sword slid across the throat of a qi practitioner, producing a smear of scarlet blood. With that, all of the lackeys Si Qing had sent over had been slaughtered. Li Qingshan felt at ease and began laughing aloud. His battle intent surged and his murderousness soared, but it had also merged with the dragon arena unknowingly. Suddenly, the entire dragon arena shook. Li Qingshan's laughter paused. The blood-red color in the sky grew thicker and thicker, completely turning blood red from its original azure blue. It began to revolve slowly, forming a blood-red swirl that constantly spread out in all directions until it filled the entire sky. From the very depths of the swirl, a cry that could not be heard with the ears rang out. It could only be sensed with the heart. It was like an army of 1,000,000 was engaged in a bloody battle in the wilderness. There were no comrades, only enemies. No one was afraid. No one retreated. They only constantly swung their weapons and advanced until the last person was left standing on the battlefield, enjoying this glorious victory alone and letting out a hysterical cry like that at the sky. Every single person who heard the cry would tremble from the depths of their soul. It was both fear and desire. In his sea of consciousness, the tiger demon suddenly let out a roar. Its desire for battle and slaughter suddenly became extremely intense. No matter who the enemy was, it was willing to fight them. Through killing and being killed, it could experience the hot-bloodedness of life. It was as if this was the meaning of its existence. Li Qingshan raised an eyebrow. The spirit turtle released a sense of indifference and tranquility, calming and diluting this heart of slaughter. Then he used the demon suppression statuary, allowing the demon heart to devour this unsuppressible demonic nature with all its might. This was basically the best supplement for the demon heart. Only like that did he barely suppress the tiger demon. This is the power from the Azura realm. The dragon arena is currently transforming into an Azura field. Originally, I thought I could stop Si Qing from refining an Azura field if I pacified the war, but I didn't think he would still succeed. Li Qingshan understood. He had once sent his divine sense into the hungry ghost realm, one of the 6 paths of reincarnation. He had felt the shock of absolute stillness, which was the summons of the entire world. What he did not know was that, in the end, it was his own power that had facilitated this transformation. The killing intent and battle intent released by the tiger demon far surpassed that of ordinary cultivators. It was precisely the resource needed to refine the Azura field like a key. He opened the door to the Azura realm and allowed the Azura field to descend. Not good. I have to hurry back. Li Qingshan collected the corpses and 100 treasures pouches of the Qi practitioners, then rushed out of the labyrinth and returned to the original arena. He immediately heard the sounds of battle. The chanting of sutras and zither sounds were all drowned out by the battle cries and could no longer be heard. Thousands of Qi warriors were engaged in a frenzied battle, which was 10 times more intense than the battle just now. Even the most basic will to survive had vanished. They brandished their weapons and attacked the people beside them, but they ignored the swords and sabers aimed at their vitals. Even if they died, they had to kill. Even if it was just a sliver of the will from the Azura realm, it was not something that the will of Qi practitioners could resist. And it was not just Qi practitioners. Faced with such a situation, even some Foundation establishment cultivators became restless and restless. Killing intent surged into the clouds as the blood-colored vortex in the sky spun faster and faster. The battle on the ground became even more frenzied. A Foundation establishment cultivator's eyes were bloodshot as he waved his sword and roared, "Stop! Stop! All of you stop!" With a wave of his hand, a golden arc of light shot out and sliced several Qi practitioners in half. Now that he had started killing, he could no longer control his emotions and charged into the battlefield, killing without a care in the world. The situation was completely out of control. However, Li Qingshan knew that no matter how loudly he shouted or how fiercely he killed, he could not stop it. Since he could not stop it, then he would not stop it. He was not some hero who could save the world. It was enough for him to protect those he was familiar with. As the vortex spun continuously, the boundaries between the various battlefields shattered, and the various terrains joined together to form a huge battlefield that was several hundred li wide. Li Qingshan flew to the center of the battlefield and stood on the demon suppression tower. He called out to Lu Chongqing and the others, "Follow me." Then he put away the demon suppression tower and flew into the distance. He swept his gaze across the battlefield and saw a familiar face. Even though it was stained with blood, he could still tell that it was the Mahist clan's Hao Pingyang. He was swinging the yellow dragon cannon and fighting fiercely against someone. A demon suppression chain stretched out and coiled around him, pulling him back. He then saw the agriculture clan's Li Long and pulled him up as well to prevent him from dying in the chaotic battle. At the same time, he also saved a few disciples from the School of Novels. When Lu Chongqing and the others saw Li Qingshan, it was as if they had found a pillar of support. They guarded their minds and followed closely behind him. As long as the other cultivators still had some rationality, they hurriedly followed and rushed out of this huge quagmire. When they saw what Li Qingshan was doing, they also rushed into the battlefield, carrying 2 Qi practitioners with them as they did their best to save their own disciples. However, in the process of saving their disciples, they were inevitably attacked. Some cultivators could not help but counterattack. This counterattack caused their killing intent to burn like fire, and they could no longer suppress it. They even forgot their goal of saving their disciples and fell into the battlefield. It was as if there was an invisible force that was pulling them into this meat grinder. Even though Foundation establishment cultivators were strong, their spiritual energy was not endless. At most, they could kill over 100 Qi practitioners before they were surrounded and killed by the frenzied Qi practitioners. Only when they were over 50 kilometers away from the battlefield and could no longer hear the battle cries anymore did Li Qingshan stop. Just now, he looked at the cultivators behind him. Only around 100 people remained. The Qi practitioners were all unconscious. They had all been knocked unconscious, as they would attack and fight as soon as they regained consciousness. As a result, there were only around 20 people who were still conscious. Every single one of them had their brows furrowed and were still shaken. At the same time, they constantly suppressed the battle intent and killing intent that surged through their chests, which made them seem extremely miserable. Everyone understood one thing. The cultivation community of the Rui Commandery was basically done for now. Li Qingshan had seen a lot of things, and he could suppress his killing intent, so he still seemed very calm. He summoned the demon suppression tower again, and tossed the unconscious Qi practitioners in. It was a little cramped, but they probably did not mind. As far as the eye could see, the dragon arena was presented in its entirety. There were glaciers, lakes, and deserts. Li Qingshan thought of something. Since the spirit turtle could derive such a large maze, would it be able to derive how the dragon arena operated and find a way out? He had also learnt the most basic path of forging artifacts in the 100 schools of thought. He knew that forging spiritual artifacts was imbued with various talismans and inscriptions. As for forging arcane artifacts, it was engraving even more complicated formations to achieve even more powerful effects. Li Qingshan immediately powered the spirit turtle and began deriving. An invisible ripple expanded into the surroundings. Above his sea of consciousness, specks of starry light appeared. In a daze, the glaciers and lakes all vanished, only leaving behind fluttering inscriptions and operating formations. Every single formation was 10 times more complicated than the maze, and they were all connected to one another, which multiplied their complexity. It was like a precise machine where every single formation was a gear. They worked together and revolved together. This was a dragon arena that only the great Xia Empire possessed the ability to forge. Its mysteries and complexity had completely exceeded Li Qingshan's imagination. If he wanted to derive how it operated, even half a year might not be enough. After his shock, he immediately dismissed his thoughts and ventured into the very center of the dragon arena. Since he was unable to derive it, could he find the center and destroy it to his heart's content? Suddenly, he saw two powers constantly clashing in the very center of the dragon arena, vying for control over the dragon arena. One was obviously Si Qing, while the other was a power filled with deathly stillness. Li Qingshan was even more familiar with it. "MOU, why's this guy here too? No wonder Si Qing can't be bothered with me." Seeing his enemies fight to the death was obviously something to be happy about. However, no matter which of his enemies ended up with the Azura field, he would probably be the first one they would deal with, so there was nothing to be happy about. Though, this might be a good opportunity. Li Qingshan's eyes flashed, but he did not alarm them. He patiently waited for them to fight to the point of exhaustion. Hua Qinglu saw Li Qingshan gazing off into the distance in a daze. She asked, "Big brother Li, what do we do now?" Li Qingshan saw how she was worried, but she could still maintain a relatively calm demeanor. The effects of the wisdom imbuement truly were startling. Otherwise, with her original temperament, she would have been knocked unconscious and tossed into the demon suppression tower. He smiled. "It's not like there's any danger right now. Let's just wait and see." The influence of the Azura field could be regarded as a boundary, so it was not enough for Foundation establishment cultivators to kill each other madly. Of course, that was under the premise that they could not fight with others. It would be best if they did not even look at it, much less think about it. It was as if everyone possessed lust. If they personally watched demons fight, it would be very easy to trigger this lust, and it would be easier to control it. Hua Chenglu looked at his relaxed smile and felt very at ease. Once this place is completely converted into an Azura field, Azura will probably descend. Han Tie suddenly said. His armor was mostly damaged, but he still seemed as cold as steel. He stood there as straight as the spear in his hand. However, flames blazed in the depths of his eyes. As a disciple of the school of the military who pursued the path of slaughter, the Azura field's influence on him was actually not that great. The cultivation of the school of the military had always placed great emphasis on tempering one's willpower. On the battlefield, it was obviously easier for veterans to remain calm than new recruits. Moreover, the aura that permeated this place gave him a sense of familiarity. The Azura realm had always been the home that all military disciples sought. Only the souls of true warriors could avoid the judgment of the Hell realm after they died, and begin an endless battle and slaughter in the Azura realm. Of course, to ordinary people, this was probably no different from the tortures of Hell. His father was currently in the great General King's Azura field, while his uncle was probably fighting somewhere in the Azura realm right now. Following in his father's footsteps, his heart burned with fighting spirit, but he also experienced a different kind of peace. There was an invisible barrier between the two worlds. Unlike the legends, this Azura was not ugly. He had a head of messy gray hair, but he looked rather dignified. It seemed that legends could not be completely trusted. Li Qingshan shook his head, and a strange smile appeared on his face. With this Azura's cultivation, he would be heavily injured if he did not fall to his death, unless he knew some flying spells. He would most likely be dismembered by the cultivators in an instant. What mysteriousness and majesty would he have? Just as he was thinking about this, he saw Azura suddenly brandish his dual truncheons and fiercely strike the void. With a bang, the air exploded, and the speed of his descent slowed down a little. At the same time, his body stretched out, and pieces of rock-like muscles suddenly flowed like water. He constantly made subtle movements, stirring up the flow of the air. His dual maces were brandished into a ball. It looked messy, but it coordinated with every movement of his body, slowing down the speed of his descent. The smile on Li Qingshan's face disappeared, replaced by admiration and a hint of vigilance. Beside him, Han Tie's eyes burned with a blazing light. To be able to achieve this without relying on any spells and only relying on physical skills, it was truly extraordinary. Li Qingshan believed that if he had the same physique as this Azura, he would probably be able to do the same thing, but he wouldn't be able to do it as easily as he did. Although he was good at fighting, it was all about the overall strategic situation or the grasp of local tactics. Although he would often perform outstandingly in a battle, it was impossible to say that his moves were exquisite beyond compare. He had only cultivated for about 10 years, and he was cultivating several techniques at the same time, spanning across 3 races, human, demon, and demon. Where would he find the time to study and polish the changes in his moves? Some things were difficult to make up for with talent. Little and might seem to have a heaven-defying comprehension ability, being able to comprehend the sword intent of the 3 absolutes calligraphy just by looking at it once, but it was due to the years of strict education in the prefecture overseer's manor. Although she had temporarily forgotten her memories, some things had been deeply engraved in her instincts. Li Qingshan, on the other hand, did not have such an opportunity. He adhered to the principle of 1 man can defeat 10 men. Instead of refining his moves, he might as well raise his cultivation and use absolute strength to crush his enemies. However, after seeing this Azura, he stopped underestimating him. If an ordinary Azura had such superb skills, it would probably be even more astonishing if it were a powerful Azura. It should not be forgotten that other than one man can defeat 10 men, there was also a saying that went, 4 ounces can overcome 1,000 caddies. Absolute skills were the same as absolute strength, both giving one an overwhelming advantage in a battle. Seeing that the Azura had disappeared into the horizon, Li Qingshan and Han Tie flew up without saying a word, only to see that the Azura had landed in the center of the battlefield. There were still several thousand cultivators fighting on the battlefield. His landing was like a drop of water falling into the ocean, unable to cause any ripples. The Azura placed his feet on the ground, looking down at the entire battlefield like a lion patrolling its territory. A man taller than him appeared behind him. His muscles were bulging, and there was an obvious bulge on his forehead. Li Qingshan had actually seen this man before. He was the eldest senior brother of Horned Rhinoceros Mountain, who had competed with him in strength several years ago. However, his luck did not seem to be very good, for he had not broken through to the Foundation establishment realm for several years. Perhaps it was because of that competition that he had experienced that he had not broken through. However, he had basically gone through the trials of battle. His body had become even sturdier, and his aura had become sharper and sharper. If Li Qingshan were to judge him, he could be regarded as a peak master among Qi practitioners. The eldest senior brother of Horned Rhinoceros Mountain spewed out 2 puffs of white gas from his nostrils, and like an angry rhinoceros, he charged straight at the Azura. A red light flashed in the Azura's eyes, and in an instant his expression became extremely ferocious. His nostrils flared up, and the corners of his mouth curled up, revealing his sharp teeth. He seemed to be both furious and laughing. In an instant, he had transformed from a normal man into a ferocious beast. Li Qingshan immediately understood why Azura men were said to be extremely ugly. It was not a disgusting ugliness, but a frightening ugliness. He could not help but smile. He had done it as if it were light. It was extremely easy. Azura grinned maliciously as he struck the same spot with his mace again. Horned Rhinoceros Mountain's eldest senior apprentice brother's eyes widened as he let out a roar. Azura raised his other mace, and as if striking a rock, he struck it again and again into the body of Horned Rhinoceros Mountain's eldest senior apprentice brother. After striking it several dozen times, blood gushed out, and Horned Rhinoceros Mountain's eldest senior apprentice brother finally breathed his last. All of this happened in but a moment. The other Qi practitioners reacted, agitated by Azura's aura, brandishing their weapons to kill him. Azura's murderous aura flourished even more. Instead of retreating, he charged into the fray, his 2 mace swinging wildly, immediately stirring up a whirlwind of slaughter. All Li Qingshan saw was that Azura's attacks were vicious. There was no pattern to it, but every single strike was precise and effective. They were all killing moves honed through endless slaughter. Basically, all the Qi practitioners who clashed with him died in a single move. A while later, several more people died to his metal mace. However, in a chaotic battle like this, it was impossible for him to emerge unscathed unless he had 3 heads and 6 arms. A few deep wounds appeared on his body, but they did not bleed. Instead, they rapidly healed. To think that a low-level Azura like him possesses such vitality. How impressive. If the battle continues, he'll definitely be the last one to survive. Li Qingshan rubbed his chin. An Azura like that was even more powerful than some Foundation establishment cultivators who were not skilled in battle. If it were a sect like the sect of Clouds and Rain that primarily practiced the arts of charm, it would not even be strange for Azura to kill them. That's the undying body of Azura. It's said that powerful Azura can even be reborn from a single drop of blood. Han Tie mentioned everything he knew about Azura. reborn from a single drop of blood. Interesting, Li Qingshan said. He believed that once he cultivated the phoenix's scripture of Nerva to a certain level, he could also be reborn from a single drop of blood. As he said that, another Azura descended from the sky, followed by a third, a fourth. More and more Azura entered the battlefield, working together very quickly. Their teamwork was exquisite, turning them into an army that became more and more unstoppable. They split up the battlefield and massacred the frenzied Qi practitioners wantonly. Hua Sengzan's expression changed slightly. Even he had to flee from an army of Azura like that. Li Qingshan asked Han Tie another question. If I have the Azura field, can I summon Azura to fight for me? If that was the case, this would be an endless army. If more powerful Azuras were to be summoned, even he would find it difficult to deal with. I don't know, but it's possible. Han Tie said. Why is that? Has he offended you? Li Qingshan smiled. Of course not. Tie's my brother-in-law, no matter what. Even if he offends me, I won't stoop to his level. However, he's a warrior. Only when he's faced with death can he be reborn. Hua Sengzan immediately understood what he was trying to say. Han Tie wanted to use this battle to break through to mid-foundation establishment. If he had a path of retreat and protection, he would instead be unable to unleash his full power. So he could only hold back his worry. Wind whistled past his ears, and pain radiated from various parts of his body. Han Tie gradually gave way, but he did not take a single step back. He allowed his blood to spurt out. As the axe swung over, he was already in dire straits that he could not block, but he felt an indescribable delight at the juncture between life and death. A wanton smile appeared on his cold face, and suddenly a power broke through his shackles and spread through his limbs. The spear in his hand suddenly seemed to be alive, twisting the tip of the spear and pushing aside the axe at an unbelievable angle. Success! Li Qingshan smiled and suddenly vanished from where he was. He leapt between Han Tie and the Azura general, wielding his spear with one hand and swatting aside the axe with the other. Han Tie frowned. Li Qingshan smiled. Victory and defeat have been decided. There's no point in fighting anymore. If you really die, I won't be able to explain myself to Qiongji. Although Han Tie had broken through to mid-foundation establishment, he had lost too much blood during the battle. He was already exhausted, and his spiritual power was completely depleted. He was only holding on with his will. The Azura general was still as majestic as ever. As Han Tie retreated, the group of Azuras charged forward. Li Qingshan swung the traitorous demon sword and said to the Azura general, "We'll fight again when you're well rested." As he spoke, his body expanded, and he transformed into his demonic form, his killing intent boiling. The Azura general stared at Li Qingshan as if he was facing a great enemy. He waved his hand to signal for the Azura to stop. Gradually, a look of surprise appeared on his face. Chapter 665. The other Azura looked at one another and knelt down on one knee as well, just like how they had submitted to the Azura general just now. It was just that this time they had not experienced battle. Li Qingshan leaned on his sword. "Why are you kneeling to me?" "Because you're an even more powerful Azura." The Azura general raised his head and said, as an Azura, he could clearly distinguish the strength of his opponent. However, if it was just a powerful cultivator, it would not have been enough to make him submit. It would just be dying in battle. Azura never feared slaughter or death. However, the violent murderousness that Li Qingshan gave off was something he had only seen on Azura commanders or even Azura kings. He had never experienced the endless battles of the Azura realm, yet he possessed such a bearing. This person was basically a natural-born Azura. As a result, he followed the rules of battle between Azura and pledged his loyalty to him. The tiger demon's will to battle the world had fused with Li Qingshan's mind a long time ago. It was also a path of slaughter, but the nature of it was much more powerful than regular Azura, which was why he was able to subdue these proud Azuras. This time, it could truly be described as a tiger trembling. Although it did not give off the aura of a king, it was just as effective. Qingshan, what's going on? Hua Sengzan and his sister hurried over as well. They were astounded by the sight before them. Just now, they did not feel it from afar, but being stared at by 100 Azuras up close made them shudder in fear. It was like how ordinary people felt when they faced a group of murderers. If it were not for Li Qingshan, the Azuras would have swarmed over them already and ripped them to shreds. Li Qingshan returned to his original appearance and shrugged. They're not my opponent, so they've admitted defeat. Admitted defeat? Hua Chenglu was in disbelief. You haven't even done anything yet you've admitted defeat a little too easily. These Azuras do not seem like people who would admit defeat obediently no matter how she looked at them. However, as long as he was present, nothing seemed to be a problem. With that, the greatest danger has been dealt with. Hua Sengzan let out a sigh of relief. After knowing that Li Qingshan was also known as North Moon, he wouldn't be surprised no matter what he did. Han Tie looked at Li Qingshan's back. However, Xiao Chun revealed a contemplative expression. He did not understand where this berserk killing chi came from. This man seemed to be hiding many secrets. Does Qiongji know all of this? However, on second thought, since he had no ill intentions towards the Han family, there was no need for him to investigate everything thoroughly. Get up. How boring. I thought there would be a huge battle. Will there be even more powerful Azuras descending later? Li Qingshan looked up at the blood-red sky with anticipation. This Azura field has only just been born. Summoning us here is already its limit, the Azura general replied. Li Qingshan nodded. Although he had successfully refined the Azura field, he still needed to continue accumulating it if he wanted to turn it into an actual combat weapon. It was no wonder that the blood-colored vortex in the sky slowed down after the 100 Azuras descended. He then asked the Azuras if they could leave the Azura field. The answer he received was yes, but they could only participate in battle. Staying outside for a long period of time would cause damage to their essence. Once they deviated from their killing chi, they would be abandoned by the Azura realm. Of course, this was also because he had just become an Azura general. His killing chi was not strong enough. If he could be like Li Qingshan, his killing chi would not be worn down no matter what world he was in. He would not be affected by this, and he would be qualified to conquer the heavenly axiom. Li Qingshan nodded slightly. It seemed that this Azura field was a summoning tool. It could summon Azuras from the Azura realm to fight for him. As the Azura field grew stronger, the Azuras summoned would also become stronger. However, there were many limitations to its usage. First, he had to have the power to suppress these Azuras. Otherwise, if he summoned an Azura king, he would be killed instantly. Pure strength was not enough to make them submit. They needed to acknowledge him as one of them. Only people who liked to fight and kill could play around with it. Hua Chenglu sighed. I wonder when we can leave. Let's wait a little longer. 10 days will pass very quickly. It probably would not take that long. Li Qingshan suddenly asked the Azura general, I heard that the women of Azura are all beauties. Why are there only men here? Hua Chenglu immediately rolled her eyes at him. Li Qingshan smiled. I was just saying it casually. No matter how pretty the Azura are, they can't compare to our sister, Chenglu. Hua Chenglu's face reddened, and her eyes brimmed with smiles. Clearly, she enjoyed it very much. Cough cough. Hua Sungzan cleared his throat and glanced at Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan said, "It's not like I'm flirting with you. What are you coughing for? Not to mention that my brother-in-law hasn't even said anything yet." Hua Sungzan lamented, "You've even admitted that you're flirting with me. You really are careless when you make friends. Tie, you need to keep your brother-in-law in Cheongji's place. It's already fortunate that he doesn't hit me. You better keep your sister in check." Han Tie said coldly. Li Qingshan laughed aloud. "Look at how you make me sound like a tyrant who takes advantage of others. If it weren't for your vicious nature, how would you have intimidated these Azura? Even if I defeat them, they won't obey me." Han Tie then said to the Azura general, "Wait, let's fight again." "I refuse," said the Azura general. "Why?" Han Tie frowned. He saw the Azura general look at Li Qingshan again. Although he had chosen to serve Li Qingshan, he was still extremely displeased with him interfering in the battle. Li Qingshan kicked over. "I told you to fight, so fight. Stop spouting so much bullshit. I definitely won't interfere this time. I don't care if you fight to the death or not. You all deserve it." The Azura general took a few steps back and clasped his hands. "Yes, sir. Let's go and watch from the side." Li Qingshan placed his hand on the shoulders of the siblings, Hua Sungzan, and made his way off into the distance with his arm around them. "What a bully!" Hua Qinglu grumbled. So be it if he took advantage of her in private, but he was even flirting with her in front of so many people. What a despicable, overbearing man. All Hua Sungzan could do was smile bitterly. Seeing how Hua Qinglu did not even resist such intimacy, he refused to believe she was heartless even if he was beaten to death. What could he say as her elder brother if his sister wanted to throw herself at him? However, he did understand Hua Qinglu's feelings a little. If it were not for Li Qingshan's presence this time, it would not just be Hua Qinglu. Everyone who entered the dragon arena would be dead as well. Even if they did not die to Si Qing's lackeys, they would die to these Azura. Si Qing probably never planned on paying the astronomical reward he had offered in the first place. Even now, the opportunity to escape from here was all on Li Qingshan. Seeing how relaxed he was, she stopped worrying. She would just let him bully her and dominate her for a while. In the center of the dragon arena, the two powers separately turned into a majestic black dragon and a pitch-black crow. The clash became more and more intense. Si Qing saw the appearance of the Azura, and he wanted to control the Azura field even more. Although these low-level Azura could not be regarded as any great assistance to them, this was only the beginning. As long as they had sufficient time, they would be able to form an Azura army. Compared to these Azura, the subordinates they lost were nothing. Both their battle prowess and loyalty paled in comparison. As for that Li Qingshan, he could kill him easily. Thinking up to there, he bellowed out, "Dragon's might is sea." The black dragon shone brightly, gradually suppressing the crow. Mo Yu obviously refused to let go either, cackling as he resisted with everything he had. The damaged Soaring Clouds terrace was completely silent. Sweat dripped down Si Qing's face. The Golden Core cultivators exchanged glances. If they launched a sneak attack right now, Si Qing would not be able to stop them no matter how powerful he was. In order to save their disciples and followers, they no longer had any scruples. If Si Qing was heartless, they would not be righteous. Jiazhan and Yidan worked together to separate the Golden Core cultivators, preventing them from attacking recklessly. For a moment, they entered a stalemate. None of them dared to act recklessly. Si Bao asked, "Big sis, how long are they going to fight for?" "Soon." Gu Yenying smiled, but her eyes that were as sharp as a hawk's gazed at the Soaring Clouds terrace beneath her feet. As soon as she finished speaking, there was a great boom, and a scarlet-red figure leapt up from the soaring clouds terrace, picking up the dragon arena and running away. It was the North Moon's demon that had returned. Oh no! Jia, Zhen, and Edan suddenly looked back, and their faces changed drastically. The North Moon unfurled a pair of wings of wind and fire, rushing off into the air with a streak of fiery light. At the same time, in the center of the Azura field, the black dragon had established his victory, but he was exhausted too. Suddenly, a spirit turtle descended from above, radiating with an unstoppable, powerful will that suppressed the black dragon and crow at the same time. "Who is it?" Si Qing and Mo, you were both surprised and furious. "My two good grandsons, have you even forgotten the voice of your grandfather, North Moon?" The spirit turtle suddenly spoke in the human tongue, filled with complacency and mockery. In the blink of an eye, it seized control of the Azura field and purged Si Qing and Mou's powers. Si Qing suddenly opened his eyes, only to see Jia Zhan and Edan in pursuit. With a furious roar, he turned into a black dragon and chased after them. In the Azura field, Han Tie was just about to engage in a fierce battle with the Azura general when the scenery before him suddenly changed. He discovered he was high in the sky, and below him was the commandery city of Rui. He had already left the Azura field, somehow. Afterwards, he saw Hua Sengzan, Lu Chongqing, and so on. They had already emerged. Li Qingshan was obviously among them too. Amidst their shock, before they could even return to their senses, a black dragon whistled past them. Mou grabbed North Moon's neck and said sinisterly, "You will die. Everyone will die, but not today." North Moon's face also turned deathly gray, but he smiled extremely radiantly. Mou suddenly felt that something was wrong. When he looked at North Moon's hands again, they were completely empty. The Azura field had already vanished. Then his figure also began to ripple, gradually turning into nothingness. It was as if someone had created a ripple on the surface of a lake that was as smooth as a mirror. In an instant, the various scenes reflected on the surface of the lake all began to ripple. As the ripples settled, North Moon had already vanished. Mou was stunned. His face that resembled a corpse suddenly began to twitch and twist violently. He had expended several days of effort to invade the Azura field, even going as far as to form grievances with Si Qing. In the end, his mortal enemy, North Moon, had actually taken advantage of the situation. His chest burned with fury, so he suddenly raised his head and let out a crow's cry. All the people and beasts on the ground who heard the crow's cry immediately died. Si Qing watched helplessly as the Azura field he had refined vanished before his eyes. It was like he had been struck in the head. He was so depressed that he almost coughed up blood. Surging killing intent assaulted him from behind. Looking back, he saw over a dozen furious golden core cultivators chasing after him. They used their strongest killing moves right from the start, no longer holding back at all. "Die, you scoundrel!" Below the soaring clouds terrace, Li Qingshan smiled at Han Qiongji. "Don't worry, I'm fine. Tie is fine too." Water rippled in his right hand under his sleeve, forming a water mirror. The water mirror twisted, and the palm-sized Azura field appeared. He immediately used the spirit turtle to suppress its aura. This was his most versatile innate ability, the water mirror's image. In the beginning, he could create a mirror clone. Afterwards, he discovered that he could use it to reflect attacks. Afterwards, he discovered that he could use the water mirror's image to directly summon his clone over no matter how far away he was. The items on his clone were obviously no exception. In the past, he had never considered this move to be of much use. It was only convenient for him to summon his clone over to help out at crucial times. Perhaps when his clone was surrounded, he could summon it back in time and avoid some losses. He didn't expect it to be so effective this time. Although he couldn't directly pull the clone over, he could secretly transfer the loot back to the main body through this water mirror. Leaving the clone, there was just a trick to lure the tiger away from the mountain. After fooling both Si Qing and Mou and obtaining the Azura field, Li Qingshan was delighted when he looked at the distant horizon again and saw Si Qing fighting against a group of golden core cultivators. He was even more delighted. Double the good news. Ha, my good grandson, I Qing, didn't your grandfather North Moon still benefit from all your painstaking efforts and cruelty in the end? If he thought about this carefully, there were actually quite a few doubtful points, such as how did North Moon grasp the perfect timing to intervene? And how did he find the core of the Azura field as soon as he intervened, gaining control over the Azura field? Even Mou had spent several days before he gradually eroded the core of the Azura field. However, no one could imagine that the real North Moon had been trapped in the Azura field the entire time. He had used the spirit turtle to derive and analyze the entire Azura field, which was why he succeeded in a single stroke. Suddenly, he felt a sharp gaze. He turned around and smiled brightly at Gu Yenying on the soaring clouds terrace. He said to Han Qiongji, "I'll go talk to Commander Gu." He called Hua Sengzan. Hua Sengzan followed him in a hurry. The two of them arrived on the soaring clouds terrace and clasped their hands. Subordinate Li Qingshan, Hua Sengzan, greets Commander Gu and Commander Si. Si Bao said impatiently, "Li Qingshan, tell me everything that happened. What happened inside?" Li Qingshan told her everything that had happened. He did not lie at all. He only skipped over everything that had to do with his secrets. When Si Bao heard that Li Qingshan had obtained the Banyan Tree King's fruit of wisdom, she had already widened her eyes. When she heard how he took on 18 people alone and defeated Si Qing's lackeys, disbelief filled her face. The Banyan Tree King gave the fruit of wisdom to a kid like you? You were actually able to defeat so many Foundation establishment cultivators alone. Don't you dare lie, or I'll beat you up. Li Qingshan smiled. Just because of you? What did you say? Si Bao doubted her ears. This kid sure had no limits to his arrogance. Cough, cough, nothing. Hee, I overreacted. I've been agitated too much recently. Gu Yenying stopped Si Bao, who was about to lose her temper. She smiled. All right, you can keep going. Afterwards, I went to the various battlefields and put an end to all the battles. I also killed all of Si Qing's subordinates. However, afterwards, the Azura field descended, and it still fell into chaos. In the end, only the few of us were left, but we were quite lucky. We managed to make it out alive. Apart from Li Qingshan, everyone felt like they had survived a disaster. However, he was probably the only one who could rejoice. Even the 100 schools of thought in the Clear River Prefecture that had the most survivors had lost most of their disciples. However, Li Qingshan did not recognize any of them, so there was nothing to feel sad about. This subordinate can testify that everything Commander Li said is true. Hua Sengzan also said. His gaze drifted between Gu Yenying and Li Qingshan. He could not help but wonder, does she know about his other identity? I'm such an idiot. If I didn't know, why would I treat him so differently? The two of them both stood between the human path and the demon path, so they obviously possessed a natural rapport. They were both straightforward and unfathomable. In the past, under the cedar tree outside Qingyang City, they had actually met by fate, and he was just an insignificant foil. He could not help but think about how Li Qingshan had once told him that he would either pursue her with everything he had, or he would let it go gently. He had even said that he had no idea just how far apart they were from Gu Yenying, Before he knew it, many years had passed, and he could already stand beside her. Thinking up to there, he suddenly made up his mind. It was time for him to make a decision. Sibao clapped her hands and smiled. Si Qing is in deep trouble now. He probably won't even be able to keep his position as the Marquis of Rui. I really do need to thank that North Moon. If he had only used cultivators as sacrifices to refine the Azura field, the imperial court probably would not do anything to Si Qing as long as he had a justifiable reason. Perhaps there might even be people who admired Si Qing's generosity. However, if he lost the Azura field, the situation would be different. The imperial family had spent a tremendous amount of money to refine the Dragon Arena. It was equivalent to an item bestowed by the emperor. Once it was lost, it would be a great crime. Now that this had happened, the act of using cultivators as sacrifices seemed both brutal and foolish. In short, evil could be protected, but incompetence could not be forgiven. The imperial court would definitely punish them. Si Qing understood this as well. His painstaking sacrifice had ended up like this, so he completely descended into a frenzy. He turned into a black dragon and roared furiously, spitting out surging black smoke that formed a black cloud. He moved through it and grabbed a golden core cultivator with his claws, about to kill him. Jia Zhen said in a hurry, "Your Highness, you mustn't." Si Qing suppressed his fury with difficulty and asked the golden core cultivator, "Do you want me to spare your life? Watch me kill you and dig out your demon heart." As Si Qing said that, he approached Li Qingshan step by step. He radiated with murderousness, but there was a white flash, and Gu Yenying blocked his way again. "You want to protect a demon?" As Si Qing said that, he even glared at Gu Yenying with hostility. Gu Yenying sighed. "Even if he's a demon, he should be personally dealt with by my Hawkwolf Guard. I've already reported this to the higher-ups. They'll be here to investigate very soon. If he's a demon, I won't spare him." Although the human race and the demon race were in constant conflict, the relationship between them was not completely hostile. That was why she could wander between the two races with the identity of a half-human, half-demon. However, it was different for the demon race. Si Qing calmed down a lot. There was only a single existence that Gu Yenying referred to as the higher-ups across the entire Green Province. Although Li Qingshan would definitely die, he would not be able to escape punishment for making such a huge mess. "All right, I'll wait for that, sir, to arrive." He possessed a dignified bearing that only eminent monks of Buddhism possessed, which allowed people to experience the true meaning of casting aside the butcher's blade and attaining enlightenment with a single glance. As a result, he asked, "Do you know which hall I'm guarding in the back mountain, Commander?" "The Demon Suppression Hall." "Then have you heard of a cultivation method in the Demon Suppression Hall called the Demon Suppression Statuary?" "I've heard of it before." "Don't tell me. No wonder. I've never heard of anyone successfully practicing this cultivation method. I didn't think it would be your fortuitous encounter." Jean Fugue was taken aback at first before coming to an understanding. Back then, the unraging monk had been protected by the Chan Monastery of Devanaga, but many people said he had already suffered from chi deviation and would struggle to make any further progress. Never did he think he would actually overcome the tribulation and reach Monk King in a single day. As for why the unraging monk would accept a secular disciple as his disciple, that made sense. Li Qingshan had clearly practiced the demon suppression statuary too, which was why he possessed a demon heart, which was why he could use the various abilities of the demon race. In other words, he possessed a demon heart, but he was not a demon. Practicing this cultivation method requires great willpower, great obstacles, great willpower, and great wisdom. It's rare for me to come across one. so I've become a little more protective towards this damned disciple of mine. Instead, it's up to him to think he's something, causing trouble for the commander by stirring up trouble. If he's done anything wrong, please punish him as you please, Commander. There's no need to worry about me. The unraging monk withdrew his demon chi and tossed aside the alcohol and meat in his hands. He brought his palms together and bowed. He was indescribably amiable. It's also great Xia's fortune to have such an elite in the Hawkwolf Guard. I can't remain in the secular world for long, so I'll be taking my leave first. Please take care. Master. Jean Fugue waved his hand with a smile. In the eyes of mortals who did not know what was going on, this was like a wealthy man who had done good deeds courteously escorting the monk to his doorstep after giving alms to a monk begging for alms. Master, it's rare for you to come. You should let your disciple prepare a banquet and feast for you for 3 days. Li Qingshan saw how the unraging monk had resolved this almost hopeless situation with just a few words. He could not help but feel grateful for his benevolence, and he wanted to ask about Little An's current situation. Humph, there won't be any good banquets. If I accept a damned disciple like you, there'll probably be a great disaster in the future. I really should just leave you to fend for yourself, the unraging monk said in exasperation, but he did not just say that out of anger. However, Gu Yening shook her head. But this might not necessarily be a good thing. The imperial family has already suffered enough from losing the Azura field. If they run into someone like you who's trying to take advantage of them, you'll be annoyed as long as they say something. It's difficult to touch their reverse scale. Li Qingshan vaguely understood what Jean Fugue was trying to say, but he did not take it to heart. There were two sides to everything. Just like how fortune was accompanied by disaster, disaster was accompanied by fortune. It was impossible for him to be afraid of offending people at the same time. All he had to do was deal with whatever came his way. The only thing he was worried about was the imperial family directly sending a third heavenly tribulation cultivator to kill him. If that happened, he would really be left with no other options. All he could do was flee. He also understood what Gu Yening was trying to say. She was telling him not to be arrogant and to be careful of making mistakes. As a result, he said, after ingesting the fruit of wisdom, I vaguely comprehended quite a lot more. I plan on entering secluded cultivation for a period of time once I return and try to break through to Golden Core. If there's anything you need, feel free to ask. Gu Yening nodded. She still owed Li Qingshan a debt. However, now that Li Qingshan possessed the identity of the unraging monk's first disciple, there was no need for him to be too secretive. He could obviously explain it as a form of investment. What brings you to my humble abode today? In the storm, a man with scarlet hair, scarlet eyes, and completely naked stepped over the surface of the water, striding over. His flawlessly handsome face carried a wicked smile. He was North Moon, or more accurately, Li Qingshan's mirror clone. As the saying went, when enemies met, their eyes would turn bloodshot. Edan's eyes had indeed become bloodshot all of a sudden. He gave off a violent aura, immediately scattering the rain in the surroundings. He stared at North Moon like a monster about to swallow him whole. North Moon. Jia Zhan raised his feather fan and stopped Edan. North Moon, return the Azura field, and we'll write off our grievances. We'll leave immediately. Or, do you really want to fight to the death with us? However, he had already made up his mind. Once North Moon handed over the Azura field, he would immediately snatch the water god's seal and cut off his wings before finding an opportunity to kill him. Well, I admit that I was indeed in the wrong in this matter, but the Azura field is not in my hands. It was snatched away by that MOU, and I was almost killed by him. I only managed to escape with great difficulty. North Moon spread his hands and said helplessly. He also frowned internally. With just a clone, he was definitely no match for any one of them. Even if his main body rushed over, he would not be able to defeat their combined forces, unless Helicoverparosa was willing to come and help him later. However, he had no hope in this at all. The injuries and lost demon chi recovered very quickly. But in that instant, Jia Zhen had already flown several li away. He wanted to obtain the water god seal first, and then work together with Yi Dan to launch a pincer attack on North Moon. Li Qingshan waved his right hand, and a violet talisman flew over. He bellowed, "Freeze!" Jia Zhen's figure suddenly stiffened, like a tiny insect stuck in space, immobilized. A freeze talisman. Yi Dan, stop him. He circulated his powers in a hurry. He never expected North Moon to use a precious violet talisman right off the bat, but the freeze talisman could not freeze him for long. Now, he instead eased up, as he had confirmed that this was not North Moon's main body. Without waiting for Jia Zhen's warning, Yi Dan's punch had succeeded, and he followed it up with another punch. His chi condensed into half a wolf. The wolf's howl even drowned out the thunderous storm. If he were struck directly, he probably would not even have the time to recover before he would directly collapse. All Li Qingshan could do was flap his wings of wind and fire desperately. The huge wolf lunged over from behind, and he swung his hand backwards without even looking back. Spirit Turtle's profound shell, pieces of translucent hexagons, weaved together to form a thin screen of light behind him. It clearly reflected the huge wolf's posture. Yi Dan did not take this tiny obstacle seriously at all. The huge wolf collided with the screen of light and tore it apart easily, but a small portion of the force was reflected back. The huge wolf twisted and exploded loudly. Affected by the shock waves, Li Qingshan felt his back ache, but he could not care about that. Right now, he was in a race against Jia Zhen. He had to obtain the water god seal first before immediately using the water mirror's image to hand the water god seal to his main body. Then he would win. He flew forward further and saw Jia Zhen staring at him with a sunken face. His body trembled slightly as light flickered on his body, about to break free from the freeze talisman's restraints at any time. A foul wind rushed over from behind, and Yi Dan's figure swelled up, turning into a giant, almost 30 meters tall. His clothes ripped apart, revealing a lifelike tattoo of a black wolf on his chest. He roared furiously as he strode over, actually no slower than when he flapped his wings. Truly, there was a tiger ahead and a wolf behind. Jia Zhen's arm suddenly moved. He waved his feather fan, lightly, and pointed it at the approaching North Moon. The lightning in the sky seemed to have found a guide and target in that instant. They gathered into a blazing lightning snake, swimming through the sky at an unbelievable speed and striking Li Qingshan. Boom! Li Qingshan's entire body shook. He did not feel any pain, only a deep numbness. For a moment, he was unable to move. Only then did he feel intense pain everywhere. If Jia Zhen had not barely managed to cast a spell under the effects of the freeze talisman, this bolt of lightning would have completely ended Li Qingshan's race. Before he could recover his wits, an evil wind assaulted him from behind. The gigantic Yi Dan stretched out his fingers and grabbed at him. He only needed to squeeze hard, and his clone would immediately shatter. Li Qingshan gritted his teeth and took out a second purple talisman. Activating it, there was a flash of golden light, forming a steel fortress around him. This was a defensive talisman. The steel fortress twisted and deformed under Yi Dan's brute force, producing an ear-piercing rumble, but it forcefully blocked it. Li Qingshan had already used this opportunity to fly towards the center of Moon Court Lake. Jia Zhen waved his feather fan again, and a whirlwind whistled up, sucking Li Qingshan in. The battle on the lakeside reached the island in the center of the lake. Yi Liubo said in surprise and joy, "Sister, it's Master's Demon Chi. He's currently fighting with someone. Gather everyone." Yi Liusu passed down the order, and the night roamers answered loudly below the watchtower. As the commander of the night roamers recognized by the North Moon, Li Qingshan had already used her own methods to consolidate her authority, even though it had already been quite some time since he last came. She was slowly restoring the glory of the night roamers. "But how can we help Master with just us?" Yi Liubo was willing to die for him, but she also understood that his battle was not something they could take part in with their strength. "Have you forgotten? Get everyone to the altar. Mother will host the ceremony." "Yeah, I almost forgot. What about you, sister?" "I'm going out for a moment." "Going out?" Yi Liubo gazed in the direction of the lakeside. Just the shockwaves from the battle, there were enough to make her shiver inside. "I'm not taking part in the battle. I'm taking the water god seal." "Oh, right. Send someone to invite Helicoverpa Rosa." Before Yi Liubo could reply, Yi Liusu leapt off the watchtower. She merged into the darkness. She was not too clear about the exact situation, but she could tell that the water god seal was crucial. With his strength, he could flee even if he could not win. The chances of him being directly killed were not great. However, if he lost the water god seal, it would be an irreparable loss. The pitch-black, torrential rain whistled down. Li Qingshan gasped for air, but in that moment, he had almost been killed several times, and had already used up all the purple amulets he had on him. He had only managed to slow down Jia Zhen and Yidan's footsteps slightly, but was unable to cause any damage to them. The two of them had displayed terrifying strength that far surpassed that of ordinary golden core cultivators. Either one of them had the strength to fight against his main body. It was all thanks to that rare purple immobilizing talisman at the beginning that Jia Zhen could hold out for this moment, preventing him from using his full strength. However, the power of this immobilizing talisman ended here. Jia Zhen shuddered and struggled free. A sinister smile appeared on his face, but he felt slightly regretful. "I was worried that it was his main body, but it turns out that it's just a clone. I should have joined forces with Yidan from the beginning and killed him. I guarantee that he won't even be able to use those purple amulets." With a thought, he waved the feather fan in his hand. This time, it was Li Qingshan's turn to be unable to move. He was enveloped by the giant wolf in the blink of an eye. He did not even have the time to recall his clone. The clone was directly destroyed and disappeared between heaven and earth. With such an absolute difference in strength, he had already done his best to be able to struggle to such an extent. After Jia Zhen waved his fan, he did not even look at the result and flew towards the place where the lightning intersected. Yi Liubo had completed Yi Liusu's orders and waited by the lakeside. She looked anxiously at the sky full of wind and rain, and her heart suddenly shook. Master's demon chi has disappeared. That can't be. That's just Master's clone. He might have concealed his aura and escaped. Master won't die. What are you mumbling about? Yi Liusu walked out from the dark lake. The water flowed smoothly off her body, and she carried a naked child in her right hand. He looked to be only 4 or 5 years old, and he was struggling with his legs. However, his movements did not seem like those of a human's. "This is that fish." Yi Liusu tossed the child onto the ground. The child wanted to return to the lake water. She said coldly, "You are called Little Red, right? There are people outside who want to seize the water god seal. Lord North Moon has entrusted the water god seal to you for safekeeping. If you lose it, I don't think I need to tell you what will happen to you." Li Qingshan delayed for a moment, and Little Red finally passed the heavenly tribulation and became a demon general. However, it was still exhausted after the tribulation, and Liusu restrained it with a single move. She did not waste any words and directly brought it to the underwater palace at the center of the lake before explaining. Hearing this, Little Red immediately did not dare to walk towards the lakeside. Boom! A surging force violently collided with the array formation that enveloped the underwater palace. The outermost layer of the array formation was already on the verge of breaking. A giant came to the lakeside with a scholar standing on his shoulder. He saw Little Red at first glance and pointed his feather fan at it. "Hand over the water god seal, and I will spare your lives." Only then could they form self-restraint. Otherwise, the strong could easily suppress the weak and make them swear loyalty to them for life. Otherwise, they could do whatever they wanted. And even if it was a heartfelt oath, there would not be any punishment from the heavens if it was violated. It would just easily form an inner demon. Oaths with stronger restraints required certain techniques and arcane treasures. Jia Zhen did not take an empty, vicious oath like this seriously at all. He had already made up his mind. The moment they handed over the water god seal, an opening would definitely appear in the layers of formations. By then, he could destroy them conveniently and turn all the night roamers and demons into slaves, selling them to the Dragon Province. Liusu sank into her thoughts before letting out a sigh. "Forget it. What did you say?" Jia Zhen's face sank. Liusu ordered Liel Red, "Hurry up and activate the water god seal. Stop them for a while. Sir North Moon will arrive to provide reinforcements very soon." "You bitch." Jia Zhen's face changed drastically. He never thought they, who were as insignificant as ants, would be bold enough to trick him. "Jia Zhen, I've already said it before. Your tricks can't be used everywhere. It's just a bunch of third-rate formations. No matter how many layers there are, they can't even withstand a single blow. Let's destroy the formations. We have to get these two bitches." Edan had run out of patience a long time ago. He was extremely disapproving of Jia Zhen's thoughts of playing tricks and taking shortcuts everywhere. As he said that, he threw a punch at the formation. Suddenly, a surging wave slammed over from behind. His body that stood over 30 meters tall staggered, and his punch landed on the formation, but it failed to achieve its intended effect. The barrier of light was riddled with cracks, but it still held. It was Liel Red, who had just transformed successfully. She was currently powering the water god seal. Edan was not injured, but he was surprised inside. The water god seal is actually so powerful. It's already so powerful when powered by a measly demon general who has just undergone the heavenly tribulation. If the North Moon gets his hands on it, wouldn't he be even more difficult to deal with? "I have to destroy the formation as soon as possible." He raised his head and howled as he punched out with both fists. Like a thunderclap, the layer of spell formation was destroyed in an instant. Jia Zhen waved his feather fan, and various techniques rained down like a storm. It seemed chaotic, but it was actually targeted at the special characteristics of each layer of the formation using different techniques of the 5 elements. The two of them could not help but think, he's just a demon general, yet he possesses such great power and so many tricks. If he undergoes another heavenly tribulation and becomes a demon commander, all they can do is flee. They've completely fallen out with him this time. If none of the 3 of them can undergo the 3rd heavenly tribulation, then there'll be no end to the future problems. However, the arrow was already nocked. It had to be fired. As the voice rang out, North Moon was already right before them. He spoke the same words, but with a completely different tone and presence. There was no longer any falseness, only naked viciousness. Edan suddenly looked back. North Moon, you're finally here. Jia Zhen, keep destroying the formations. I'll fight him. North Moon, I'm Edan, the first disciple of the Beast King in the manner of myriad beasts of the Dragon Province. Are you bold enough to fight me? Li Qingshan said nothing more. He only reverted to his original form and threw a punch. It seemed slow, but it was actually fast. He pushed forward layer by layer, and black cracks gathered on his fist. He had completely put on a glove. It was still the same move, tremors of the ox demon, but compared to his clone's punch, who knew how many times more violent it was. Boom! With a great rumble, the wind and lightning changed color. Edan took a few steps back. His eyes widened, and his right arm trembled slightly. Blood flowed down like a stream. Chapter 674. Above the torrential lake, bolts of lightning ripped through the night sky. An invisible shockwave spread out in all directions. In that instant, countless waves were torn to pieces. A large region of water actually recovered its peace for a moment before immediately becoming even more turbulent. In the lake, two colossal figures faced off against each other. The crimson eyes that were like burning charcoal and the wolf eyes that shone with jade-green light shot out like lightning clashing in the air. They were both violent and bloodthirsty. However, in Li Qingshan's eyes, apart from the violent and bloodthirsty look, there was also a sense of steadiness akin to a mountain as he looked down on Edan. A pair of curved horns stabbed into the sky, and a pair of hooves dug into the ground. The deep lake water only reached his waist, and the huge fist constantly slammed against his pitch-black, reef-like chest. Edan stood closer to the island, so the terrain was much higher. However, he was still more than a head lower than Li Qingshan. He could not help but raise his head and look at this wretched demon who was much weaker than him in both cultivation and time of cultivation. Blood flowed down his right arm, dyeing the water red in the blink of an eye. Apart from his startlingly great strength, the terrifying tremors contained in the punch were the true culprit behind the damage. A shrill wolf's howl suddenly ripped through the night sky, coming from Edan and the black wolf's tattooed mouth at the same time. His muscles bulged, and his bones extended, swelling up once again. Black wolf fur erupted from his body like spears, covering his entire body. He turned into a black wolf that stood on its hind legs. A long wolf tail even grew on its back, swinging wildly. Li Qingshan also felt threatened. This person's personality was extremely detestable, but he was still an opponent worth fighting. His body and strength were definitely not something a regular golden core cultivator could possess. However, he found it strange. He's also half human, half demon? I wonder what the origins of the Manor of Myriad Beasts are. The Manor of Myriad Beasts was one of the major sects of the Dragon Province. It was on par with the three major sects of the Green Province, and it even surpassed them in certain aspects. It was specifically responsible for managing the Garden of Rare Beasts for the imperial family of Great Xia. Edan's master, the Beast King, was the lord of the Manor of Myriad Beasts, a great cultivator renowned throughout the Dragon Province. In the mountain villa of 10,000 beasts, where the strong were respected, Edan's strength naturally far surpassed that of his peers, since he could become the Beast King's first disciple. The disciples of the mountain villa of 10,000 beasts had to attract beast souls into their bodies since they were young, and they would form tattoos on their bodies. When they fought, they did not need to rely on any external objects. They only needed to release the beast souls, and they would be able to possess terrifying combat power that far surpassed cultivators at the same level as them. However, the deeper the release of the beast soul, the easier it was to be infected by the bestial nature. As a result, the temperament of its disciples was more barbaric and violent. They weren't bound by morals and etiquette, and they did whatever they wanted. They were close to the path of demons. Moreover, if he was not careful, even his soul would be devoured by the beast's soul and become a sacrifice for the beast's soul. Most of the disciples in the mountain villa of beasts had died to the beast soul. Therefore, Edan would not release the beast soul's power to such an extent unless it was a critical moment. Roar! Edan's back arched high. His feet kicked backwards, and in that instant, he lunged at Li Qingshan at an astonishing speed. Many parts of the golden avatar around him twisted and deformed, riddled with cracks. It was on the verge of shattering. A scarlet streak of light flew past him, constantly colliding with his body and producing a great boom, like a great bell. With each collision, the golden avatar would collapse a little, and the cracks would become even more concentrated. It was Li Qingshan. He had recovered his scarlet-haired, scarlet-eyed appearance. He pushed his speed to the limit. Although Edan could also fly, he clearly was not as nimble as Li Qingshan with his wings. After a battle in the air, he basically could not fight back at all, so he charged down without any regard. Edan's eyes flashed. He saw the black altar and understood the origins of the shadow, so he aimed at the moon court dwelling. Boom! Edan slammed into the moon court dwelling head-on. The sound drowned out all the thunder. His golden avatar completely shattered, smashing through several layers of formations in a single stroke. The remaining formations tottered, on the verge of shattering at any time. Li Qingshan's eyes lit up, and he took advantage of the opportunity to leap up. He charged towards the moon court dwelling. In his one-on-one battle against Edan, he seemed to have gained the upper hand, but the situation was actually quite dire. Whether it be the wings of wind and fire or the power of tremors, they were all startling in power, but they all consumed tremendous amounts of demon chi. This was exactly the reason why he did not dare to use the spirit turtle's profound shell to defend the entire time. Once he ran out of demon chi, basically all of his innate abilities would be rendered useless. Even if his power was limitless, he would only be a living target. There was even the danger of dying here. The realm of demon general was his bottleneck after all. He had always been waiting for an opportunity to retrieve the water god seal, which would allow him to advance or retreat. Jiazhen and Edan could do nothing to him now. Stop him. Don't let him retrieve the water god seal. Jiazhen casually forced back the shadow that had already become extremely thin. He swung his feather fan at Li Qingshan, and pure white ribbons of light wrapped around his limbs. Edan turned around and lunged over, his huge claws whistling over. Li Qingshan suddenly took out an item and aimed it at the lunging Edan. He snickered. The Azura field. Jiazhen and Edan blurted out at the same time. A blood-red swirl spun out from the Azura field. Edan was unable to react in time, charging headfirst into the swirl and vanishing. Li Qingshan broke the ribbons of light. He passed through the only remaining spell formation and entered the moon court underwater residence. He landed heavily on the sandy ground and picked up Little Red in one go. He patted its belly and spat out the water god seal. Then he glanced at the space between its legs. Fuck, it's even a male. So much for giving you such a feminine name. Xiao Hong. You can go be gay with Xiaolon in the future. He angrily tossed him onto the sand. North Moon, it really is you. Jia Shun's face sank. North Moon had retrieved the water god seal. They had basically already lost half of this battle. So what if it's me? Li Qingshan turned around and said with a smile. He swallowed the water god seal and instantly felt endless water spiritual power pour into his body, flowing through it. His demon chi recovered quickly, and he felt refreshed. Jia Zhen threatened. The Azura field belongs to the imperial family. Do you know what will happen to you for taking it? You've even offended MOU. Even the Dragon King of the sea won't protect you. You're even more stupid than I imagined. The water god seal belongs to your father. Do you know what will happen to you for taking it? You've even offended your grandfather. Even your grandmother won't protect you. You ask who your grandfather is. Of course it's still me. You're even more stupid than I imagined. Li Qingshan was completely dismissive of Jia Zhen's threat. Jia Zhen's expression changed. Monster, you don't know what's good for you. Li Qingshan shouted, cut the crap. Do you dare to fight me in the Azura field? Watch me fight 1 against 2 and blow up your dog heads. Otherwise, I'll blow up your dog heads here first. Jia Zhen mocked. Do you think I'm as stupid as you? You want to trap Edan with the Azura field you've just refined? Of course, you can run, but I'll slaughter all the night roamers on this island and your demon subordinates. Are there any of them that you're particularly familiar with? I'll give them a special treat. Then it looks like all I can do is stuff you in. Murderousness and malice surged out like a tsunami erupting from Li Qingshan's body, ready to be unleashed. I'm just afraid you don't have the strength to spare. Jia Zhen's figure suddenly multiplied into 2, then into 4, before turning into almost 100 in the end. They spread out and spoke at the same time. How crafty! Li Qingshan cursed inside. If he used the spirit turtle to divine, finding Jia Zhen's true body would not have been difficult. However, his right hand was behind his back, holding on to the Azura field. Jia Zhen was right. If he could trap Edan and finish off Jia Zhen in a one-on-one battle, he would have taken action a long time ago. There would have been no need for the series of battles earlier at all. At this moment, the surface of the Azura field constantly rose and fell. Edan rampaged around inside, about to break out at any time. Instead, it took up a tremendous amount of his energy and demon chi to control the Azura field and suppress Edan. The Azura field had just been refined, so it was like a newborn. Although it had the potential to become an arcane treasure, it did not possess much battle prowess right now. After all, the dragon arena that it had originally been made of was not used for battle in the first place. The two of them faced each other across the only remaining formation. Jia Zhen wanted to wait for Edan to emerge, while Li Qingshan was thinking of a plan. For a moment, they entered a stalemate. North Moon, looks like you're in trouble. Suddenly, a familiar voice rang out. Li Qingshan looked back and saw Helicoverpa Rosa standing on a rock nearby in black, tight clothes. Her blood-red lips curled slightly, completely like she was watching a show. Clearly, she had no plans on assisting him. Since you've come, cut the bullshit and come help me. I can escape if I want to. By then, do you think they'll spare you? They'll probably fuck you 100 times. Li Qingshan's eyes lit up. As he spoke, he made his way behind Helicoverpa Rosa. As long as Helicoverpa Rosa could keep Edan busy in the Azura field for a while, he could finish off Jia Zhen first. He did not doubt Helicoverpa Rosa's abilities. She was a carapaced demon commander after all, and she even possessed a powerful defensive innate ability. Edan was vicious, but he did not have something like the tremors of the ox demon at the end of the day. Killing Helicoverpa Rosa would not be that easy. Ha! I didn't think there would be a time when you'd beg me. Why should I help you? What benefits do I get from helping you? Let me tell you, I want to see you die. Helicoverpa Rosa smiled extremely bewitchingly, looking down at Li Qingshan from above. She recovered some of her pride as a queen. Li Qingshan stared into her eyes and licked his lips. If I win, I'll fuck you 101 times to repay your kindness. Helicoverpa Rosa exclaimed in shock and fury. What? Get in. Li Qingshan flapped his wings and flew up. The azura field in his hand came crashing down on Helicoverpa Rosa's head. Helicoverpa Rosa had not expected Li Qingshan to attack her when a great enemy was right before her. She did not know what the azura field was either. Before she could react, she immediately disappeared into the blood-red vortex. The ripples in the azura field immediately calmed down. Clearly, Edan had received this gift. As for whether they would fight, Li Qingshan was not worried in the slightest. A berserk wolf and a venomous spider were locked in the same cage. There would definitely not be a second outcome. As a result, he casually stowed the azura field away and turned around. He said to Jia Zhen, "I want to make a bet with you." "What bet?" Almost 100 Jia Zhens spoke together, their voices overlapping and echoing. That one of us is an idiot. Li Qingshan looked at the Jia Zhen. "Who are you betting on?" "You, of course." "Dead. People don't know how to use their brains." Li Qingshan leapt into the air, directly lunging towards where Jia Zhen's true body was. He had only said that so he could use the spirit turtle to confirm where Jia Zhen's true body was. In the surging lake, huge waves surged like tsunamis, sweeping towards Jia Zhen. As the true master of the water god seal, only Li Qingshan could unleash the true power of qi. Oh no! Jia Zhen used an escape technique without any hesitation, turning into a streak of light and flying off into the distance. All he had to do was endure for a while and wait for Edan to kill the demon commander and charge out of the azura field. If the two of them worked together, they would still be undefeatable. But with a thought, he saw the North Moon arrive right before him. He actually flew no slower than the streak of light. You're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.